Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians. And because it's safe in a business, not because they wanna do it, because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes. This day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. Hopefully the sound is good. My husband had to rearrange the mic setup a little bit so you don't see it peeking down here right now in the scene. We've got it like on this pivot that was on the honey-do list he did while I was away at the LNC meeting. And I was scrambling before this video to, you notice I don't have any makeup on, so that already means us scrambling, but I was trying to do my nails. 2 of them are painted. Well, it's dip powder, but you guys don't know the difference. Let's just say painted so I don't get into technicalities. Always takes me way longer because I'm like such a fucking perfectionist. Wait, I was trying not to cuss. I'm telling you, the only way I'm going to stop cussing, I think, is if I have to give a donation to the People's Party every time I do. That will stop it. Let me get a drink here. Now, I hope a lot of you watched the meeting over the weekend, but if not, we will go over tonight, what happened. I tried to do at least a day 1 update on Saturday, and the Wi-Fi connection just at the hotel sucked. So it wouldn't let me, but I guess it's better just to do it all at once, right? And I'm not quite so tired. I'm not dreaming of getting drunk. Well, I actually am, because after this, I'm going to sit by the fire with my husband and drink, but it's not like going out drinking with friends with a bar that's going to close at a stupidly early hour. Because you know, coronavirus gets worse the later it gets. In case you didn't know that. Dr. Fauci told me, and he wouldn't lie, would he? Okay, this is, particularly this type of show is participatory. because I have no idea what interests you guys. I have no idea what I'm not explaining well, what you might have questions on. So before we get started, though, quickly, as I do, oh, I don't have my little logo. There she is. She's cute right there. Okay. Also, up at the top, if you enjoy the work that I do, please consider becoming a patron. I did over the past week get 2 new patrons after a long dry spell, and I am eternally grateful because I am right now unemployed. I am looking for a job. I've got an interview tomorrow. I've got a bunch of interviews, though, of course, the dream, obviously, to live the dream is to do Liberty stuff full time. But that's not going to, probably not going to happen for a while, but I'll keep trying. And if you would like to assist along the top here. But yeah, and today I signed a mortgage modification agreement to get me out of foreclosure, which was nice. So hopefully things will be straightened out by the time the new mortgage payment is due, which is July 1st. Not trying to guilt you. That was a tangent. If you like my work and you can afford it, please consider becoming a patron, and you do get some bonus content. We are currently going through Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 1972 because we're really trying to get a feel for what the political world was like in the 70s to help with the historical things that I do. The next book I've decided will be Radicals for Capitalism. I have been told by so many people that that book, better than any, encapsulates the mood and the zeitgeist at the time the LP was founded. So that will be our next book. And David, I completely understand. Hopefully the foundation inspection goes well. And if it goes well, I'll know because you'll be able to help. And if not, I'll be praying for you. And I don't mean that in a facetious way. You do know, my regular listeners know that I'm a person of faith. I don't push that on anyone else. But just saying, I take it as my good wishes and my fervent hope that you do not find anything bad. Inspections for anything to do at houses are maddening. And one of the LNC members, in case you do not know, is a house inspector. Just point of trivia, Eric Radsep is a home inspector for home sales. Okay, let's get started. I want to take this off the screen. And I can't believe you guys never noticed the logo before. A friend of mine a while ago designed that. But let's get this off the screen. Okay, I am going to pull up on my own screen here, if you see me looking down, my notes from the meeting, because I definitely will not remember everything. But the notes I am looking at, you also could be looking at. Anyone can during the meeting. If you recall, if you were at the 2020 convention, because it was both live and in person, both live and in person. The in-person people were not alive. No, because it was both remote and in person. I projected a lot on the screen, more than the secretary normally does. You basically saw my notes, as incomplete as they might be, but it's the type of notes I take during a meeting. Okay, but that's the same type of thing. You could watch that every LNC meeting. I have live notes that I do on a Google document. If you go to the OneNote for the meeting, which is always advertised on the LNC list, it's also advertised on the post at lp.org that announces the meeting. And you could always ask me. I'll probably start advertising it more as a public service. And it's usually a tiny URL that goes like this. Like this month's was the tinyurl.com, LNC June 2021. So like our next meeting is going to be in September. It will say LNC September, but probably abbreviated SEPT 2021. I try to keep it that way. Okay. So we're going to start. We're going to start from where shall we start? I was born on a cold, windy day. No, we're going to start at the beginning of the LNC meeting. When we call to order. And I'm going to go through things briefly. And if anyone has any questions, just ask me to slow down, ask a question, and we'll go over it. So we always start with an opportunity for public comment. And what I really loved this time, and I don't know why we didn't think of this before, and when I say we, I really even shouldn't say that. The idea was Joe Bishop Henchman's. He gets the credit. It wasn't a we thing. He also allowed public comment by phone. And since we do have remote viewing, remote viewing's like a psychic thing. I didn't mean it that way, but online viewing of the meeting through YouTube, it only seems fair, right? That the online gallery, as it were, should be able to also have opportunity for public comment. I don't think we had any because it's the first time we did it, but in the future, now you know you can do that. And public comment all revolved primarily around one issue. And that's what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to give you some more opinions about it than I had at the time of the meeting. And you want to know what? It might be interesting if we played the public comment, since I'm going to talk extensively about it. If you give me 1 second, I want to see, because I'm not sure if I can share a YouTube without downloading it. And downloading it would take a long time because it was all day. But let me look it up, because it'd be great to share the public comment. So I'm pulling up the Libertarian Party page. Let's look up videos. LNC meeting, day 1. The beginning. Okay, I'm going to put this on my screen, and you guys are going to need to let me know if you hear the sound, because I'm not sure if you will. Let me also put up on my screen the sound levels, because that should let me know if you're hearing sound as well. But let me put that sound. Oh, see, this thing's not tightened up enough. You see my mic creeping in? Wayne's gonna need to tighten the hinge it's on, because you could. Hi, Mike. You could see it creeping in. That's not good. So when you see it come probably lower and lower, it's not threatening me. Let's see here. Sound levels. Okay. Let me put this up on the screen, and let's see what happens. Okay. That is... I haven't started it playing yet. I'll let you know when you can let me know if you hear sound. I want to also put something else up on the screen. Me, but not here. I don't want to cover the video. That would be kind of stupid. So let me make myself smaller and put myself over here. Okay. All right, let me hit play on this, and you guys can see if you can hear the sound once I do that, which I haven't done yet. Okay, let's see. Okay, hit play, but there's... Let me go to where the meeting actually starts, because it stays. Meeting will begin soon for a little while here. Okay, where does it start?
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, and I'm going to need to turn that way up, I think. There's still no sound, so don't think you're missing anything. Still no sound. Oh, because it's not playing. I'm a dumbass. Ooh, that's really low, you guys. Sound levels. Let me see if I can bump up the sound levels. You guys listening live must have had a hell of a time. Let me put this forward. If this doesn't work out, I won't play with it for too long.
By George Washington.
Okay. Okay, can you hear sound?
Hello? Yes. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, state your name and state and your comment.
Reverse his position on Guantanamo.
Okay, here we go.
County, DeWitt County, and Erie, Cook County. think it's important that from the national level on down, we set a tone of compassionate, caring, and loving liberty without being offensive and edgy just for the sake of being offensive and edgy. I would love to be able to put my sole focus onto running forward and fight for the unemployed state.
I know it's low, and I'll stop at points to re-narrate, but let's see if it gets serviceable when it gets to the LNC members.
Mr. Rivera, floor.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to say that in between the last meeting and this meeting, I was appointed to the alternate of the LNC bylaw.
Okay, I'm going to switch screens 1 second here. Omar. Okay. I want to move past here. So let me just narrate what you guys couldn't hear very well. Sasha Cohen from Illinois had said that there were issues that he's an elected libertarian, by the way, that there were issues that were communicated to him by, I didn't want to do that. Why did I do that? By other libertarians regarding a tweet or a Facebook post. I can't remember which it was. I think it was a Facebook post from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. And actually, it wasn't one post. Actually, I believe that he mentioned generally their posts have made his constituents in the Libertarian Party unhappy, and that he wishes maybe the National Party could do something about it, or he just wanted to bring this to our attention. So this is a party member bringing up issues he had with posts, but it was a tweet. Thank you, I see, and Sam. I couldn't remember. I never saw it. I still haven't seen it to this day, though I had someone describe it to me more fully later. So he was expressing his dissatisfaction. And that of people who have communicated it to him. Now, I want to make one thing clear here. That is perfectly appropriate for a member to say in public comment. That is what public comment is for. You pretty much get to say whatever you want in public comment, unless you're abusive. But this wasn't anything like that. Sasha was perfectly polite. That was his view and the view of others. Perfectly appropriate for him to say that. But now I want to get to where the discussion continued. Right now, Omar is talking. Then we get to Justin Tucker from Illinois, and those were on different topics. I want to get to where we go back to the New Hampshire tweet. So I'm going to move ahead here a little.
Be silent when you're basically being Donald Trump and making policy.
Oh, I think this is it. I think this is when Mr. Valente was speaking. So let's go back a little bit.
Silent.
I'm going to go back. Okay.
And we want to be edgy. We want to get likes and shares and all that stuff on Twitter.
We'll start here.
That's great. If you can do that and convey libertarian positions, please do that. But don't do it by completely misrepresenting our positions on torture, on due process.
Okay, I'm going to stop for 1 second. The speaker now is David Valente, who is Region 5 alternate. When he started talking, he made it clear he was speaking on his own behalf, not as an LNC member. And while I respect that, because I do that quite a bit, I don't think you can do that when you're sitting at the table of an LNC meeting as a voting member of the LNC. I appreciate that was his intent, but I really don't think you can do that. You're there because you're an LNC member. He wasn't even an alternate there because Susan Hogarth, the primary, wasn't there. So he was a voting member of the body seated at the voting table. So my opinion is he was speaking as an LNC member, even though he did say that he wasn't. And reasonable people can disagree about that. Okay, let's continue.
Because just like the Second Amendment where it says, shall not be infringed, 3.2 of our platform says, without exception. Now, we can be better, and I invite the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire to improve its messaging in this regard. Again, if they put a tweet that says the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire has reversed its position on Guantanamo, we can have that debate at our national convention. We can have that debate. I know where I'll stand on that debate. I know where a lot of you will stand on that debate. But don't put it in my name. And when you say it's the Libertarian Party, that's everybody in this room. That's everybody watching this live stream. That is everybody who is a National Party member. You're speaking for us when you put it in the Libertarian Party's name. So be better. Communicate better. And if you communicate better, I'll share it. But don't communicate.
I'm stopping one more second. Please feel free in comments here to give your opinions as well. And later on in the meeting, the camera operator, who is part of staff, did start panning the camera, but right now you don't get to see the speakers. And we were socially distanced at the table. Like, I'm right next to Joe Bishop Henchman. In this frame, it certainly doesn't look like it. It looks like I was farther than I actually was. I must have been just out of frame. But unfortunately, at the beginning here, you don't get to see everybody.
Like this and expect me to be silent when you're basically being Donald Trump and making policy through a tweet. So I yield my time.
Yeah. I'm actually not speaking in my personal, I'll be speaking as secretary. I think it's very bad form that we are.
Okay, stop in 1 second. That's me speaking, which you probably can tell. I'm slightly off camera, and I said at the very beginning, I'll not say I'm speaking as a member of the public. I am speaking as secretary of the National Party. Okay, and I'm not as loud as Mr. Valente because the microphone was closer to him.
Trashing an affiliate without asking them to be here. I agree with all the comments that Mr. Valente said on the policy, but I also very much respect the autonomy of an affiliate. And when an affiliate puts out a tweet, it is understood to be under their name. We unfortunately, and to our shame, only recently added that anti-torture claim. Thanks to Nick Sarwark, was the one who promoted that. But our state affiliates are not required to follow the national platform. And if we're going to have this discussion, which I think is a valid discussion, I would like to invite a representative from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire to be here. I think that's only fair. Or even the leadership. I'm more thinking of the people who would be responsible for their social media.
Am I allowed to say something? Sorry.
Well, but if I could.
Why don't we let them know?
Yeah, it's not an argument.
Oh, no, I never argue, Valerie. So just on that count, I think that's just for fair. I think if it was any of our affiliates, we would want the same courtesy. I haven't seen that tweet. If it is as represented, I would share, and I don't doubt you misrepresent something. But on some of their other tweets that I've heard some people complain about, I can tell you in Colorado, we've gotten messages going right on. So it's always a matter of taste. And we need to be really careful about that we're not hanging up on somebody. And I'm just really, really concerned about that. I wouldn't want Colorado to be trashed like this without our board having something to say.
Thank you, Ms. Harwood. Ms. Harwood.
Okay, so, and Aaron Adams reflected what I had to say. And also, and then Valerie Sarwark, as a member of New Hampshire, gave her thoughts. Let me go back. Here we go. Let me just remove this little thing here. So my whole point was LNC members need to be very careful. We should not be, in our official roles, trashing an affiliate. If we don't like a tweet that they made, the chair should write them privately and talk to them about it. But ultimately, we have no authority over the tweets that affiliates make. We need to be very, very, very careful. We do not even give the appearance of infringing upon the autonomy of an affiliate. We have only one option and that's what Aaron Adams would say later, but I'm not going to play it because, again, it's really difficult to hear and I don't want to try your guys' patience. We have only one option if the LNC is unhappy with an affiliate, and that is disaffiliation. And if we're not thinking about disaffiliating somebody, we shouldn't be talking about their business and in an unflattering way. That to me is way out of our lane as a national party. Has nothing to do with disagreeing or agreeing. It's just what is the proper role of the national party. And I don't think LNC members should have jumped in on this. Sasha was perfectly within his rights to say whatever he wished. But it got different when LNC members got up to, and I only spoke because another LNC member spoke. Normally I don't talk during public comment. I think we have plenty of time as LNC members to talk. We can do it during announcements and leave public comment to the public. But again, there's no rule against it. That's my personal opinion, and reasonable people can disagree. As I said, I'm not trying to disparage anyone. So would love to hear y'all's opinions on it. Now that I understand what the tweet was, somebody described it to me. I do think some of the reaction was a bit overblown. I wouldn't have tweeted something like that, but I think I would have understood it was a joke. And apparently what the tweet said, and somebody who's actually seen it can correct me, was something to the effect of, at least for Dr. Fauci, the Libertarian Party has reversed its opinion on Guantanamo Bay. Dark humor. Just basically saying, well, we're not against torture, but we'll make an exception for Dr. Fauci. Is basically, it was not a good look. I don't think it's a tweet an affiliate should have made. But I do think if it is as that way, pretty obviously a joke, a bad one. But I think if somebody took it seriously, as if we actually did reverse our position on torture, I would think they might have been looking to take it seriously rather than it being a joke. I think it's perfectly legitimate to complain it was a bad joke, but I don't think anyone was deceived that the Libertarian Party, New Hampshire or otherwise, has changed its position on torture. You would have to, your hair would have had to have moved when it passed over your head that badly. So that's kind of my opinion on it. Bad tweet, bad joke, and that's about it. And the LNC shouldn't put its nose in it, as far as I'm concerned. My opinion. Don't come for me. Well, actually, I'm inviting you to come for me, but be nice. Okay, next. So that was how the meeting started. So at first I was like, "Woo, boy, this is going to be a spicy meeting," but it didn't turn out that way. So who was present and absent? Everyone was present with the exception of Susan Hogarth, who was instead attending the Libertarian Party of Delaware convention, which is super nice because they don't get a lot of love. And she sent her alternate, Mr. Valente, in her place. So Region 5 was represented. Mr. Nikela, who was Region 2, I believe. It's the region that has Florida in it, because he's the state chair of Florida. He was absent for personal reasons. He sent his alternate, Mr. Sexton. So they were adequately represented. And Mr. Bowen, who was the Region 8 alternate, I believe was sick, and he was absent. So that was the attendance, which was very good. And there were no voting seats absent because the two regionals had their alternates there. And I will say the past 2 terms, alternates have been very good about attending. In the past, alternates were kind of told, you're like, how kings have the heir and the spare. They were like the spare, and you really didn't need to come or do anything. That is not the way our bylaws read, and alternates are supposed to show up. It's not like optional, and people who run for alternate should be prepared to show up. So that was the first day. We didn't really have any controversies about the agenda, and we had a long-ass agenda. There were like 21 policy manual changes, and we'll talk about why there were so many. Okay, next controversy, maybe. And if I can, I would like to, if you guys would be interested, because this was the next controversy, I'd like to play the chair's report, the oral version of his report in full, if the sound is decent. So let's move to that point and let's see if the sound is decent. So let me share my screen one more time. And let's see. Let me see if I can get to it. It's coming up very soon, and the sound.
To witness a key case. So when a case is handed down, nobody but the justice.
Okay, that's it. You guys will have to let me move it back. You guys will have to let me know if the sound is worth playing it. Trying to go to the beginning. I think it's right here.
Mr. Longstreth, is there any objection? Without objection. Yeah. Zooming along. Next item is report of potential conflicts of interest. Ms. Harlow, did you have anything further?
It's coming up.
No, I'm not unless anybody had any further to send to me. It's in the OneNote.
Whoops, sorry.
If you have anything further on that, just go ahead and send it directly to the secretary. And with that, we're on the chair's report. Need 15 minutes.
Okay, once he starts talking, please let me know if the sound is okay. If it's worth playing.
Morning, everybody. So glad we're all here. There's this quote by George Washington. Except historians are pretty sure he never said it, but it's attributed to him. Too bad it's apocryphal, because it's a very good one. That's what it is. Government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, a dangerous servant and a fearful master. It's a shame that he didn't say that, because it is such a vivid and concise illustration of the power and danger of big government. The closest I've come to the closest I've come to saying something, anything as eloquent as that, is what I've said in a number of recent media interviews, that the government pendulum swings from tragicomic incompetence in one direction to militaristic overreaction in the other, and seemingly no in between. President Cunningham excluded, Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Cohen. One of the great privileges I have of being national chair is having.
I am pausing 1 second just to let you know that his speech is 15 minutes. If people in comments tell me that they really don't want to hear that much, I won't play it all. But it's going to be up to you guys. Either way, we'll talk about the mini controversy that happened.
Having the opportunity to ask libertarians how they came to join the party. And every person has a proximate cause. One of the presidential candidates, a friend bringing them to a meeting, picking up literature at an outreach event. But there's usually also a deeper moment that primed the person to be ready for us. A moment when they saw government, as George Washington did not, but should have described it, for what it really was, when the mask slipped a little bit. Here's mine, when I saw it with my own eyes. The date was June 26, 2015. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I got up at 4 a.m. to do something that you can only do in Washington, D.C., which is head down to the U.S. Supreme Court to line up so that we can watch the opinions being handed down in the courtroom inside that day at 10 a.m. The courtroom seats about 300 people, so if you've never done it, it's still very old school. It's first come, first served. You line up, and the first 300 people get into the room. When a case is argued, it's very well known in advance what case it will be, so a lot of times you'll have people camping out the night before to witness a key case. But when a case is handed down, nobody but the justices and their clerks know the date and what it will be. So it's a game of guesswork. You don't know what case you're going to see handed down. We were there for the second day of the road because I had deduced that it'd be likely that the gay marriage decision would come down there. It takes a bit of tea leaves reading because it's based on which justices still have opinions to write because they try to evenly divide the vote. I can go on and on about that. But others had made the same calculation. There were a lot of people in line. By that time, Ethan, our friend Dalton, and I, we arrived about faster. I left them in the public line and joined the much shorter lawyer's line because we had our own line. I was the second person in line. So after standing in the dark and the dawn for a few hours, we got led into the building at about 9 a.m. By that time, both lines were very long, and our little group was seated in the courtroom. We managed to make it in. Me and some of the other lawyers around me were in the second row, dead center. Ethan and Dalton, a couple rows behind us, was public. And as we waited, the courtroom began filling up in preparation for the 10 a.m. beginning of business, filling the capacity. I noticed most of the LGBT bar that I have come to know over the years, and even some of the justices' families, which is unusual. And then retired Justice Stevens was ushered in to a seat, which told me something big would be happening. And when Justice Kennedy took his seat clutching a giant pile of papers, such as we all do here, I knew it would be good. And so there we sat as Justice Kennedy read his opinion in Obergefell v. Hodges, holding that state governments have no role in stopping two people of the same sex from getting married. By the time he was done, there were not a lot of dry eyes from people who had worked so long for us. I wish that's where the story ended. But it's not. Because if you are a justice on the Supreme Court and you disagree with the majority opinion, you have the right to explain your dissent out loud in the courtroom after the majority opinion is read. I'm told Chief Justice Roberts rarely invokes that privilege for himself because he wants the court to appear as unified as possible. But he invoked it that day. And so he explained why the state laws should be upheld. And as he scanned the room while he was talking, he looked right in my direction, again 2 rows away. He didn't have a lot of this, but he was looking right at me when he hit the last sentence. This is what he said. By all means, celebrate today's decision, but the Constitution had nothing to do with it. The hatred I felt, that I feel, for that callous disregard of my rights is indescribable. It's tempered only by the fact that he lost. Had he won the day, Ethan and I would not be able to marry in most states of the United States. We would be a subcategory, treated by the law as entitled to fewer rights than the rights enjoyed by everybody else. We won that day, but so many others on so many other issues have not. Chief Justice Roberts is not an evil man. He's an accomplished jurist, by all accounts a great family man, and frankly, I agree with him more than I disagree with him. I think his Obergefell dissent was a sincere one, not based on prejudice. But he plays his part in a system that sometimes, now and then, must show its fangs. You may have seen this mentality yourself. Anytime a bureaucrat taps the rule sign rather than help someone in need. Anytime a politician is selectively outraged, depending on whether doing the right thing helps or hurts their team. Anytime somebody quotes Robert's Rules of Order a little too enthusiastically. Government is not reason, it is not force, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, a dangerous servant and a fearful master. I have a figurine in my office of the White Witch from the Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. Great series, definitely. It's an out-of-place item when you come to my office, and I often get asked why I have it from visitors. She's there to remind me that evil is rarely orange and fire. It's sexy. It's seductive. It's cheerful slogans, rallies of happy people, good people not rocking the boat. It's getting you outraged about the other side so that the people doing it to you can use that energy for nefarious ends. Despite my hatred for Chief Justice Roberts that day, I still file legal briefs with him. I still say, Mr. Chief Justice. I carry on, working and living my life. I use my anger and my outrage for constructive purposes. You may at times be angry and outraged. I live in D.C. and know full well how hard the Democrats and Republicans work to stoke that in you, because while you are fighting on Twitter, they are safe. They win when we have a lack of empathy towards each other. country is repulsed by keeping everyone outraged by misinformation, but that's fine for them, because the name of their game is to gin up the base to vote against the other side. We must be different. We can give people something to vote for. We want to take away the power of one person to decide whether I can marry, whether students can get an education, whether someone can build a new home, whether a small business lives or dies, etc., etc., etc. To win, we must be persuasive. If we are to have 10,000 elected libertarians, and I believe we can, we must talk to people on issues that they care about. We must work harder and face odds many times greater than our opponents. We must respect each other, and we must have fun. So I look forward to seeing all of you on August 27th, 28th in Colorado for our 50th anniversary event. I just want to leave you with 3 numbers that, as I go to state conventions, I've been to 15 of them so far this year, and I've seen, I think, almost all of you at them. I share a bunch of numbers, but there's 3 that I really feel really proud about, and I hope you can keep sharing them over and over again. That's 240, 693,000, and 54%. 240 is the number of elected libertarians we have right now in 40 states. A year ago it was 180. We're not quite yet at our peak, which was about 300. We'll get there. But an incredible accomplishment from a board that has made getting libertarians elected a priority for the party. Second number was 693,000. That's the number of registered libertarians in the 30 states that have partisan voter registration. If you extrapolate upwards for all the remaining states, that's 1 million self-identified libertarians. Doing everything we can to bring them in, make them active. But it's a lot of libertarians. The third number is 54%. That's the percentage that Marshall Burt got in his district in November of this last election. Whenever anybody says that we can't win, I do hear it quite a lot. I'm sure you do too. Tell them 54%. Marshall Burt was able to build a libertarian majority in his district. Not by watering down his message, not by selling out, but by doing the hard work of knocking on every door in his district 6 times, by sending out mailers, by being active in his community, and by, of course, getting the infrastructure support of the Frontier Project and this LNC. So 240, 693,000, 54%. I am excited about our future and where we're going, and I've also submitted a written report with lots more information, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'm stopping here for 1 second, because it's during the question and answer portion that, again, there was a bit of a mini controversy, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the audio.
Two things. First, Mr. Cohen, you still here? What was your win percentage?
82.
So there's even more fun number for us.
Okay, and just stop in 1 second. That is John Phillips, Region 6 representative speaking.
Second, Mr. Chair, you know I love you, and you know that I agree with everything you had to say in that. But that's not a report. Okay, that's a speech. I love you. I love what you got to say. But a lot of us have traveled a long distance to come here to these meetings and like that. To not sit here and listen to your speech, but to listen to what's on the business side. Speeches like that would be great for tonight.
Let me now remove that and remove this little. So I hope I hope you guys were able to hear. And hello, Julian. So basically, during the 15 minutes of the chair's report, the chair gave more of a speech rather than a report. And there was an objection to that, saying that the LNC is there to hear reports and not basically keynote speeches or the like. And that's a fair point. I do think that is a very fair point. And I completely understand that perspective. But I had disagreed for the chair. Anyone else had done that, I would have agreed. But I think there's a bit more latitude when it comes to the chair. And although I did absolutely enjoy what he had to say and agree with it, even if I didn't, I'd still have the same opinion. That the chair was elected kind of to be the person who rallies the troops and sets the tone. So I do think it's perfectly fine for the chair to deliver like a mini opening keynote during his report time. So I know Mr. Bishop Henchman and I are at odds on a lot of things. That doesn't really matter. I do think that is completely his prerogative. And the story was excellent. I mean, I can't even imagine being in that room and, you know, feeling so low. Like, you know, the Chief Justice of the United States basically saying, you shouldn't be able to marry your significant other. And looking at you, even though he doesn't know you, it just like was random. So I'd be curious as to your guys' opinion as to whether you think that is an appropriate use of the chair's report time or not. And if it is appropriate, would you think that's just appropriate for the chair, which is my position, or anyone can do that? Because generally our policy is, even if you're given a report time, if you don't have anything to add to your written report, you shouldn't really say anything. You should just say, I've written a report, and if anyone has any questions, I'll ask. And it's to help things move along. Because not everyone is expected to take their entire time. If they did, we would never get through anything. But I don't have a problem with the chair doing it. That's my opinion. I would love to hear yours. Okay. The treasurer's report, I need to get the exact figure, but we are so much more financially healthy than we were last year. There was a lot of applause for that, and the fact that, as you all know, the building was paid off. And there was a lot going on with staff reports. I encourage you guys to listen to them, and you'll start to see the infrastructure that we're doing. That's 90 minutes. I'm obviously not going to play that, but it is something I would encourage you either to go read their reports, which are in the OneNote. For instance, I am going to share screen again in case you weren't here for the Thursday, like the pre-game show. That's my live notes, but let me go over here. In the OneNote, if you see, there's tabs all along here. You can see all the officers' reports are in there. But staff reports, you can see, I don't have it full screen. Let me full screen it here a second. If you scroll down, you can read all the staff reports. That's all in the OneNote. And I highly encourage you to do that. A lot of work goes into these reports. And all of the reports are here in the OneNote. So like, for instance, if you wanted to see the chair's report as to like actual things done, he does a very extensive report, as you can see here. So you can always go and read that. Ken's tends to be a little shorter because actually the vice chair doesn't have that many official responsibilities. But, you know, there's his. The treasurer. I want to see if I can find here the reserve numbers that I wanted to get for you guys that I didn't write down. So you can see all the charts as to our revenue. It's all very treasury stuff. Where is our reserves? Should be here. 1 second. I think it's at the bottom. Crap. I always forget what line it is. Well, we do have a surplus of $40,000. There's a lot of figures, but that's we were in a deficit before, so. Well, those of you who are more into that, you go take a look at the figures or listen to that part of the report. Something else that's available that you guys might not know, I wanted to show you. It's a portion of his report called Related Party Transactions. So if you would like to see the donation level of LNC members or related parties, like such as their spouses, like here you could see Ethan Bishop Henchman, which is Joe Bishop Henchman's spouse, that he's a life member and his lifetime giving, that sort of thing. We keep track of this for transparency purposes. So just to go to mine, because I feel kind of weird talking about other people. So, I am a life member. This year I have not been able to give because my job's been in jeopardy, COVID, that whole thing, and now I'm unemployed. But my lifetime giving, I've been in the party 2014, 7 years, is $7,535, which I think is respectable. Actually, whose Bishop Henchman is higher. And there was one other one. There was an $8,000 person here. Where is it? Oh no, here's Tim Hagen. And Paul Bilyeu, who's the spouse of Whitney. So, might not have been good this year, but I am one of the top donors on the LNC. And what else is in his report? That's it. If you ever wanted to see what goes into Secretary's reports, a lot of back-end things. So I talk about minutes, conflicts of interest, committee membership changes, and upcoming critical dates per our bylaws, other crap that I did, and the status of email ballots. All email ballots get reported in the Secretary's report. And for those of you who are interested, there's a worksheet in here that shows how the platform committee appointments were calculated for the 2022 convention. So if you're interested in that, you can go look at that. We'll look at some of these other reports, I think, when we get to that section. Okay, so I hope that kind of stuff is helpful. So now you know easily where you can read this. So let me go back to looking at my notes to see what was next. Okay, they had some committee meetings. We broke out for committee meetings. First time we've ever done that in the LNC. I like it. So members could attend. I think there was a convention oversight meeting, an EPCC meeting, and a budget committee meeting. I don't know how many members went to those, but those were good. Afterwards, there was a presentation from Dr. Bookman regarding work he is doing with the Nolan Archive, and he has made arrangements for the Library of Congress to accept the archive. I know a lot of people might have a lot of feels about the Library of Congress. Irrelevant. David Nolan's widow is thrilled by this, and that's all that matters as far as I'm concerned, is her wishes for her deceased husband's effects that were left over from the party. David Nolan was the primary founder of the party. And then were the regional reports. There wasn't a lot that went on with the regional reports. There usually isn't, and we're going to go back to that one note for a second. But something I want to bring to your attention. Jeff Hewitt, who is the regional representative, you notice the mic, it's come down even more. We're going to have to tighten that up. Regional representative from California. He is running in that recall election from Governor Newsom. And I think, and he thinks, and a lot of people think he's got a good chance of winning. Can you imagine, just sit for a minute and have the wet dream that a Libertarian won the governorship of California? Do you want to know how much he could change the world, actually? So, I should have had it on my screen. I'm sorry, this is lack of planning on my part, but if you Google it, you can find it. If you send me a message, I'll get it for you. Everyone, if you can, please donate to Jeffrey Hewitt's campaign. He's got a good shot, and that's almost as good as winning the presidency. And since this whole recall was dissatisfaction over the way COVID was handled and the lockdowns and all that, Jeff Hewitt's record on that is spotless. He advocated for all the things that the National Party should have been done. And Jeff Hewitt was one of the vocal people, along with me, chastising the National Party. None of his opponents, including Caitlyn Jenner, have a good record on this. Caitlyn Jenner stayed holed up in her house. So he's got a good shot. Please support his campaign financially if you can. Because if you can't financially, there's going to be plenty of days where you could go out to California and do door knocking for him. Please do that. If you can give money and do that, great. Or if it's an or. You get what I'm saying. So that was the highlight to me of the regional reports. But let's just pull them up here for a second in the OneNote. Not to look at them in depth, but just more because I like to educate you as to where you can find them if you'd like to go read these after the fact. So let me put this on full screen. Go back to the OneNote. So regional reports are under this tab. And it goes by Region 1, 2, and so forth. So you can go through and read them all. And I'm pretty sure everyone submitted a report. Just going to flip through here. I'm pretty sure they all did. Yeah, this is the one with Jeff Hewitt. It's a very pretty report. And at the end, there's some cool YouTube videos, such as an abbreviated history of sharks. Yeah, sharks, but I don't know what that word is. Whatever. It's a shark documentary. How can you go wrong with that? And that's unusual. I've never seen that in a regional report before. Did Region 6 not submit one? I'm going to have to double check that. I don't think he did. So you can go razz John Phillips about that. Okay. So that's that. We're going to go back to my notes, but I am going to go back to my beautiful face, at least in my opinion. Sorry. I'm a bit punch happy. I get really tired after traveling. So next was the committee reports. We had APRC, Affiliate Support, Audit Committee. They're thinking about potentially looking at a new auditor. We've used the same auditor for years. And ballot access. And we went to an executive committee meeting. We took a break, went to an executive committee meeting, and authorized $65,000 ballot access encumbrance to start ballot access in Alabama. Which, if we got that, that would be phenomenal. So the executive committee approved a $65,000 encumbrance. That's for this year. It will cost more than that, but the rest will come from next year's budget. And then we had the Candidate Support Committee and the Convention Oversight Committee. There were several motions coming out of the Convention Oversight Committee, but the way the chair handled them was to put them into new business without previous notice, because the report wasn't turned in within the 7-day window, though I think it was. But it was his prerogative. He put it to the next day, new business without previous notice. And then same thing with EPCC. They had a motion, and we will go over that when we deal with Sunday's business. Then there was the Historical Preservation Committee. I fielded a lot of questions and answers, so if you're interested in that, I would go to that section, let's share the screen here one more minute too, because I want to show you where you can find the written answers to those questions. Full screen again. So that would be under standing committees. Historical, it's the first one. And at the end here, here's the questions that were submitted to me ahead of time. I think there were 25. You can see the written answers, and then there was some requests for expansion on some of these answers. So there were 24. So you could go read that if you'd like. That's where you can find the written responses, just because I know some people were interested in that. Okay, back to my notes. And, oh, I see Elastic Giraffe made a comment, and we will have to respectfully disagree here, but I'd like to put it onto the broadcast. So he had said, I don't disagree with Roberts. He's referring back to the chair's speech. If the Constitution doesn't guarantee a right, that doesn't mean we can't advocate it. Judicial activism shouldn't get a pass whenever it favors libertarian outcomes. I disagree. And it would take longer than the few minutes I would have in the middle of this on a different topic to say. I know the Constitution is not the Declaration of Independence, but I do think the context of the Constitution is the Declaration of Independence, where it says that all men have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I don't think there's very many things more fundamental to the pursuit of happiness than getting to choose and have recognized your life partner. And I also think that government cannot discriminate. And if the government is going to allow one class of people to marry, I think they're still discriminating in this area, by the way. I think that there's no reason why polygamy should not be legal or recognized, however you want to put it. And of course, will that cause chaos? Absolutely. Great. Maybe the government will get its ass out of marriage like it should be to begin with. So I'm sorry I didn't see your comment earlier, Elastic Giraffe. Okay. Then we did the Information Services Committee, and they were directed to look into a learning management system so that, like, we could certify campaign treasurers. So, like, almost anything we could train our activists on to work it into a learning management system, and I think that's great. They're going to come with their findings by the next meeting. Then there was the Chair's Advisory Committee. There were reports given that you can read, and one of them was policies and procedures, which I had, in which I talked about how I am instituting the procedure, which is one of my campaign promises, for actually having a records keeping manual and procedure for the records that the National Party is supposed to keep, which they don't. Really, it's on the computer of the secretary, which is insane to me. You know, that what? It should be in the National Party. Let's go over here to the OneNote again for a second. Because if you're interested in kind of that policy wonky stuff, if you go over to Chair's Advisories Committee, you can see my report. But you can also see the manual I developed for the internal file structure organizing manual. I know that sounds like just as exciting as reading daily devotions in the book of Leviticus, but, you know, it is what it is. But you can read through it to see the structure I set up. I'm not going to flip through the whole thing because, again, you know, it's mostly dry, but it's important. Some very dry things are very important. But that's where you can read that. It'll also soon be published on LPedia. Okay, going back. I just need to minimize that again and go back to my notes, because I don't want to miss any comments from you guys if you have any. And then Joe Jorgensen gave a presentation. I want you guys to go listen to that, because there was, and I think I'm going to extract this, I'm going to extract this out into a separate video, the Joe Jorgensen presentation, because also Steve Dasbach gave a presentation, and I know Tasha Cohen, not to be confused with Sasha Cohen, who was the elected Libertarian from earlier this morning. Tasha Cohen is Spike Cohen's wife. She's been going around very persuasively arguing for us to have our nominating conventions the year prior to convention, and made very good arguments for it. Steve Dasbach, because I asked him to here, gave the arguments against it. And I think people should hear both sides. So I really want Steve, who's been around forever. He's also a former national chair. He was around when we used to do it the year before. To me, when you want to change the bylaws, there's a couple things you should always ask. Why is the bylaw you want to change there? And will you harm the party by changing it once you understand why it's there? Or if you want to change something back to a way we did it before, why did we stop doing it that way before? And has that changed? Has the reason why we stopped changed? Or was it just bad reasoning why we changed? But don't revert something if you don't know why it was changed to begin with. And Steve Dasbach knows what the problems were. And we would then have to decide if those problems are still relevant today, or this mic is really starting, it's going to hit me in the face, if they're still valid. So I'm going to extract that out maybe tonight and put it into a separate video. And that was the end of Saturday. Now that, any of you guys who are used to LNC meetings, that's tame. That is tame. I think we only had one vote that day, and it was to approve the March 7th minutes. Let me put up this other comment by Elastic Giraffe. He says, and I read these out loud even though most of you can read it, because I know a lot of people listen to YouTube videos. Sometimes they're not really watching the screen. He says, I'm more of a textualist and agreed. If restricting civil marriage to a man and a woman is arbitrary, which I believe it is, then restricting it to two people certainly is, especially in historical perspective. Yeah, that's my position. Absolutely, that's my position. And for those of you who don't know, I think I want to pull this up too, because I like to bring in history whenever I can. Funny that. This might be more recent history, but it might be a history a lot of you guys don't know. And this will become actually relevant to this meeting, but it already is relevant to the chair's thing, but it'll become even more relevant. I'm pulling up the platform here a second. Okay, let me pull up the party platform. Okay. Let me find the area that talks about where we want the government out of marriage. Let me do a word search. Okay. All right. This wording changed in, I believe, 2018. Okay, this last sentence, I'm going to highlight. This is my doing. Obviously, the delegates passed it, but I'm the one who proposed it. And it says, until such time as the government stops its illegitimate practice of marriage licensing, such licenses must be granted to all consenting adults who apply. So that has to do with what we were talking. And let me tell you another change I made. And I can't, when I say I made it, I mean, I'm the one who really promoted it. I'm the one who proposed it. But of course, the delegates are the ones who made it. Here, the sentence which says, now this whole sentence isn't mine, part of it is. Government does not have the authority to define, promote, license, or restrict personal relationships. I added, regardless of the number of participants. I think we've really dropped the ball on this. And that after, I'd like to, if I'm mostly talking, just put this here. I think we dropped the ball on this after gay marriage got made legal. We kind of just stopped talking about this. Like, oh, well, that, and we forgot about all the other people that can't get married. because we were scared of the backlash, my opinion, because some gay people were saying, oh, now that we finally get it, now you want to abolish marriage completely or government marriage completely? And we kowtowed to that. And we shouldn't have, because it's always been our position to get the government out of marriage. But we've dropped the ball on that, and I can tell you I'm not in charge of messaging, but if I were, I would be pressing that poly button so hard, and I'm not poly myself. It has nothing to do with my personal preferences or desires. Okay. Next day, there was a CRM presentation from Ken Molman and Andy Burns. If the CRM is something you're really interested in, I highly suggest you go watch that. And here's where we did something unusual. We had, again, those 20 or so policy manual amendments plus some other motions. Why did we have so many policy manual amendments? Because the policy manual needed to be cleaned up. And that came out of the Policies and Procedures Committee, which is a committee I chair. We broke into a subcommittee, which I wasn't on because I was busy working on the file structure. And those 20 or so, there were 2 that weren't from them. Policy manual amendments came out of that committee. So what Joe did, because he didn't want us to be there all day, he said, we're going to try consent motions, which a lot of public bodies do, like town councils and the like. And he said, I'm going to put a Post-it note with the title of all of these things that are on the agenda on one table. And if anyone doesn't just consent to passing it without objection, remove that Post-it note from that table and put it on this other one. We will do one motion to pass without objection everything that remains on that one, the first table, and we'll deal with all the ones on the second table individually. It was genius. We were able, I think, to dispose of 15 of them with one vote because they were minor. You can view them all in that one note. So now I will go to I'll talk about the ones that weren't without objection. Though I think they all ended up, after debate, passing unanimously. So Joe Bishop Henchman wanted to amend the policy manual where it talked about the chair's circle, which is a donor level, because the FEC raised the maximum giving limit, and he wanted to raise that amount in the policy manual. The only reason there was a debate on it was, should we name the actual FEC number, or should we change the language to be instead of a specific figure, to the phrase, the maximum allowed by the FEC, so that we wouldn't have to change the policy manual each time the FEC changed its figures. But however, there was confusion because nobody had real good language, and we decided we'd revisit that at a later time. But until then, we changed it to the number specified by the FEC. Next was to fill the platform committee vacancy, because we had a vacancy, and to appoint a platform committee interim chair. We did already have an interim chair, who was Lauren Dougherty. Lauren took a job with Young Americans for Liberty, and because of that, she also resigned the platform committee. So the vacancy and the needing to appoint a new interim chair were related. Myself and Ashley Shade were nominated to be the new interim chair. I had won that vote. I believe the vote was 11-5, but I don't have the ballots right in front of me. Then to fill the vacancy, who was nominated? Omar Ricuro. Richard Longstreth nominated Omar. I nominated Starchild. Mr. Coburn nominated... Oh, no, he didn't, because that was for the chair. Excuse me. And then I also nominated Amanda Griffiths, and I can't remember his first name. Oh, my God, I'm so sorry if you're listening, the last name of Rogers. Because they were part of the four-way tie for the last seat. they did not, Omar Rakura won that. So for alternate, I believe Star Child ended up winning alternate, if I'm remembering this all correctly. Next action item was to fill the 5 seats of the Voting Reform Committee. That is a ballot that's still outstanding because we decided to do it via OPA vote. That ballot expires at midnight Mountain Time tonight. And while I'm thinking of that, I want to see who hasn't voted so I can remind them. So I'm going over to OPA vote here just for 1 second and see how many ballots are outstanding. I gave certain recommendations for that committee because I made the motion to form it. And I'm going to manage election. Let's see. 10 people still haven't voted. Okay, that ain't right. That ain't right. I'm not gonna name and shame them, but I'm trying to find the remind button. I'll have to do that on the LNC list. It's not letting me remind. So people are going to get elected with just 7 people on the LNC if the rest of them don't vote. And that is a shame. People don't care enough to vote, apparently. Sorry. That was a bit snarky. I probably shouldn't have worded it that way, but that annoys me. Okay. Now, out of the ones also that didn't make it to consent calendar, I am flipping through here to see, because there was a few that were challenged. Okay. I want to put this on the screen, because there wasn't very many. And let me make this full screen. I challenged this one. Our policy manual language is what I'm highlighting right here. It has to do with LNC and affiliate party services. Okay, the things proposed to be deleted are in red. The things proposed to be added are in blue. I opposed only one part of it. I opposed the deletion of this section. And my reason was the bylaws require us to do this. So deleting it from the policy manual doesn't make it, because it seemed like the intent of this change was so that we didn't have to actually send anything to anyone. We just need to make it available on the website and people could go get it as they wish, which I normally don't have a problem with. But when it comes to the party bylaws, I do. I do think that we should proactively make sure people have it. In fact, our bylaws require that a copy of the updated bylaws be sent to within 90 days of the close of convention to all the chairs, LNC members, and judicial committee members. But it doesn't say who is supposed to do it. So my argument was we need to keep this in the policy manual so that this bylaws mandated task is assigned to a specific person that the buck will stop with, and that would be the secretary. And it's no big deal to do this. But however, I lost. Okay, let me find the next one. I think the next one I withdrew. I withdrew my objection. So let's go back. Okay. And let me get so I could see your comments again. We're almost at the end because there was very little else that we had to do this meeting. Okay. Now, we set our next LNC meetings. So there was all kinds of debate. But our next LNC meeting will be September 4th and 5th in Reno/Sparks at the location of the planned 2022 convention. Come out there, make a gambling weekend of it if you'd like. Our next one after that will be December 4th and 5th in hold on, Boston, or the Boston area. So, and we were talking, but I don't even want to get into that because we didn't pass anything. So those all we passed. There was a decorum policy manual that all of my concerns about what it might contain that I talked about on Thursday wasn't what it was about. So it passed without objection. It had more to deal with the LNC list and being careful to remember that staff is that they work hard, and let's not embarrass them publicly, kind of was what it was about. But anyway, now, the last thing, and here was the last controversy, and this actually to me was the biggest controversy. And I think I would like to try to find it in the video if I can. If you give me 1 second. And this had to do with the convention committee asked us to authorize 2 speakers for convention. One of them was the main keynote, that being Justin Amash. And the other one was for a breakfast keynote, that being Tom Woods. The one for Justin Amash made it through consent calendar, so we didn't have to debate it. Someone pulled off that table the one for Tom Woods, which I've been okay. This section, this tiny commentary section, and I'm probably not going to be as measured and terrible, measured and terrible. You can't be measured and terrible. Measured and very toned down as I was about commenting about everything else, because I think it's appalling what happened with this, to be honest with you. Let me try to find it. It's towards the end. Let me see if I can put it up on the screen. 1 second here, because I'd like to play this. Y'all might have heard about this already. And let me put me up here if I can. Okay, this is the second day, but I want to move me out of this little box here and over here. Okay, now let me see if we can get this to play, make sure you can hear it, and see where we're at. So I'm just going to have to start playing it and try to figure out where we're at in the meeting. Oh, that's not it. That's you laugh, you lose. What am I doing here? Here we are. Why isn't it playing? Why is it going to that? Why is it going to that? Don't want that. This is weird. It's not playing. Oh, here it goes now. Okay. Let me try to find it. It just says meeting will begin soon the whole time. Do they know? I thought it played. I thought I was watching it. Is there another video? Day 2. Only 5 minutes of it? Oh, here it is. Okay. The first 5 minutes it looks like they had issues with. Let's go here. Okay, yeah. So it was towards the end.
And that's, as Ms. Biggie pointed out, is a kind of a different kettle of fish than what we're normally used to. Our staff...
I'm listening to try to figure out where we're at.
They're going to be doing that week, but I bet it's a whole lot of stuff that they won't have time to...
Okay, yeah. That's Ellen.
Things are fine, you know, what I'm going to say is opinion. So, but I disagree that he, quote unquote, alienates large.
Okay, here we go. It's coming up.
Atlanta, Boston.
We'll be giving shortly into speakers for breakouts and seminars. At this time, the COC has voted and entered into...
Okay.
Riverside.
We're voting here on the meeting, and then it's going to go to the Tom Woods thing. So let's just let it play.
7 DC, faster. Atlanta, who had for Atlanta?
I don't want to keep moving it
What's the second
forward
choice?
because it's gonna.
So that's, there you go.
Try moving it there.
Mr. Sexton?
I'll abstain.
I'm doing the roll call vote. Okay, so we're almost there.
Mr. Radsett?
Yes.
Mr. Arworth? Mr. Smith?
Yeah.
Mr. Wen?
Yes.
So it is 14 to 0 to 1,
So yes,
15 to 0 to 1.
adopted. Next item on my list is 12E, CLC motion with respect to Mr. Woods. Is that?
Question.
Yeah, Mr. Kerr.
For the meetings that we did just discuss, monthly
God, that mic's so low.
We haven't called those,
okay.
but we can. We can do it on the list too. What was I saying? The motion with respect to Mr. Woods. Ms. Adams, do you mind starting us off with it then?
Oh, sure.
10 minutes,
So,
I think.
as the COC Planning Convention, one of the things that we look at are speakers for renewal and our keynote speaker. We'll be getting shortly into speakers for breakout and seminars. At this time, the COC has voted and entered into an initial conversation with Mr. Tom Woods in order to ask him to be a breakfast speaker at the convention. Mr. Woods is agreeable. The only thing he is asking for is his package in a room. We will have comp rooms. It will cost the party anything. Those rooms are available. He's covering travel on his own dime. He's covering all of that. He's not asking for anything unreasonable. He's willing to speak as a breakfast speaker. But as this is a major element of the convention, it requires an affirmative vote of this committee for us to solidify that and move forward.
Sorry, pedantic parliamentary procedure thing. We need a motion and a second on this,
So,
and you can't move
yeah,
unless you're currently holding the 3G seat. So,
And I'll second.
all right, Mr. Smith moves, Mr. Molman seconds. Did you have anything further?
No,
All right.
that's it.
We'll open it. I'll deem their objection since it was pulled. We'll open up for debate. Seeing no debate, I'm sorry, Mr. Coburn.
No, just briefly, I think it is important to mention, while I would be abstaining or voting no on this item, it sounds like there's hoping there might be more discussion. But, Mr. Woods alienates a broad swath of our membership. I think that that's important to note. And particularly in more diverse populations in our party, and we are not a very diverse party. So I would be hesitant to fully support him as a featured speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn. Any further debate? Mr. Phillips and then Mr. Wen.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Coburn's points. I do object to the fact that the classification of us is not a very diverse party. Last I checked, we actually were pretty diverse. So, and as to the point of Mr. Woods, yes, but sometimes having controversial speakers is just traction. I believe we had some controversial ones go to Orlando. Wasn't an issue. To be honest, it will bring people. And there was something else I was trying to work my way around saying, but I can't figure out how to say it, so I'm not.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Wendt, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Hollis.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm not a fan of Mr. Woods. I don't follow any his media or anything, but I do understand that, as Mr. Phillips said, we are a diverse party. We do have various sects and interpretations of thought, and I don't think we want to limit anything and play gatekeeper. I think that's the worst thing that anybody in this room can do. So we need to foster all aspects of the party, and we need to look at being able to create that cohesion, create that coalition, and that's what we need to do as this body is learn
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. I have Mr. Smith, Ms. Harlow, Mr. Longstreth, Ms. Billion, Mr. Mullen. Mr. Smith.
Well, I think saying that Tom Woods alienates large swaths of the party is opinion-based assertion. Tom Woods sold one of the biggest Florida conventions I've ever been to just by showing up. People love Tom Woods a lot. He's got a bigger following than the National Party does, basically. So I think that's a great idea. I think it would be ridiculous for us not to have him as a breakfast speaker. He's very well versed on libertarian thought. He's a member of the party. I think shunning those types of people is just going to shut our party down. So I would speak in favor of it. I hope you guys would as well.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Harlow.
Okay. I think it's a very bad look for this body to even be considering allowing somebody who is such a luminary in the libertarian circles. I would disagree with the opinion-based, and obviously opinions are fine. You know, what I'm going to say is opinion. So, but I disagree that he quote-unquote alienates large swaths of the party. I certainly haven't seen that. I've been on his show, and I can tell you, it does way more good than harm. And in my own opinion-based, I think certain swaths of the party might be looking to be alienated. I had a very interesting discussion with Mr. Woods over the past 2 days about an offensive thing that went out against that community where he was appalled, where he spoke to me in private. I think a lot of the people that say a lot of things about him would be ashamed if they knew the conversation I recently had with him. He is a good man, and I do not like seeing him be, put down in any way. And I think it's just a bad look for us. No matter what, any libertarian speaker worth having is going to be alienating some people, because that's just what libertarians do. If they're a good speaker, Justin Amash is going to alienate some people. Too bad. Honestly, too bad, because he represents a legitimate section of the party. The people that don't want to hear him speak can not go. We can't all want to create the party in our own image. We have to realize there's a lot of different images, and we need to model the toleration we want to see in the rest of the party and play the part of peacemaker.
Thank you, Ms. Harlow. Mr. Longstreth and Ms. Billion. Mr. Longstreth.
Thank you. So if you look at the numbers of this board, if even one person in this room thinks that they would attend that breakfast, that is roughly 17 to 18%. I don't have the exact number of what we represent of the national total party. Okay, so if 2 people in this room want to go ahead and have 2 votes there, we've got 34 to 35%. If we have an entire COC coming to us and saying that this is what we want, we have 4 or 5 members of this body who thinks that it is a wise decision to bring him in. That is a significant amount of our population where they are represented. It is a voice that needs to be heard. I don't know or care if you like Mr. Woods. I don't know or care if you like Mr. Amash. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that our convention, the purpose of the convention, is to, 1, pass bylaws and platform changes. I would say that's probably the most important thing that we do. And then 2, is to raise money, right? It's to raise money and pat ourselves on the back and figure out our expenditures, raise money in order to have those expenditures for the next year, primarily, generally, focused on ballot access. If we, by hosting a breakfast that, let's face it, not many in this people, I drank with you all the last 2 nights, would even be able to wake up and attend. Who cares, right? If there are people that want to see somebody speak and they are willing to pay X number of dollars to see that person speak, and it brings revenue into this party, let the guy speak, right? I understand that some of the things he says maybe you try as controversial. To Karen Ann's point, Mr. Amash says things too. Ron Paul did too. Controversy is what our party is about. We love to come to these meetings and debate each other. We spent 15 minutes today trying to workshop nonsense. No offense, Ken, okay? We love to debate. So those people that don't even necessarily... Those people who don't necessarily want to see Mr. Woods, they may be motivated actually to attend, which is an increase in ticket sales, just to hear what he says, to debate him. So he's pulling multiple audiences, and there is a very strong argument that he is a libertarian, and he should, with his audience, be
given the opportunity to speak. And maybe you don't like his messaging, but maybe you should hear his messaging and understand why you are so different from what he is saying versus what you are hearing. And maybe we need to all start to come together and work together to figure out how to move this party forward instead of getting so drawn into factionalism that we cut ourselves off at the knees and we stop ourselves from going. We got a lot done this weekend. We could have done a lot more if we didn't have all that background noise on the outside pulling us in 30 different directions and causing a bunch of fight. Stop. The convention's purpose is to make money and to be appealing to all libertarians. Mr. Woods is a voice in that audience. I support having him there.
Mr. Longfoot, Ms. Billiard, and then Mr. Bowman. Ms. Billiard.
First thing I want to say is the COC did vote to invite Mr. Woods to be a breakfast speaker, and I was not part of that meeting. The thing, I guess, that I just want to make sure everybody understands that this is a paid event. So people who want to see him will have to pay to see him. And in theory, only people who want to see him will be subjected to it. I also, as a committee, we also agreed that we were now going to put a second breakfast in there so that we can make sure there is an alternative to that. So everybody should be getting something for breakfast if they so choose. So that's, I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Billiard, Mr. Molman, and then time will be expired. Mr. Molman.
I am literally the person that goes to none of these breakfasts because I'm not into the whole libertarian scene at all. But as someone who's on the COC, as someone who obviously knows a lot of libertarians, there are a lot of people who like certain personalities. I have the confidence in the COC to not just, we've got Justin Amash and Tom Woods this weekend that we voted on. I expect that there's 3 or 4 more meals? 2, 3? Yeah, so we're gonna have 3 more speakers. They're gonna be speaking to a particular demographic in the party that will be different than Mr. Woods because we want to be inclusive. I know the people on the COC. I've been on a couple of their calls. They're going to be inclusive. They're going to try to diversify who the speakers are. So Amash, Woods, who's next? Don't know. That's on the COC, but I guarantee it's going to be someone else who appeals to yet another section of the party. And so as long as we're bringing people in the door and being welcoming of every section of our party through one speaker, then we're succeeding. And I have every confidence that the COC will do that over the long term. So that's all, as the guy who won't go to any of them anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. So, time has expired on this item. Does anybody want to move to extend time? All right, seeing none, Secretary call roll.
Ms. Billiard. Mr. Coburn.
No.
Ms. Eppley.
Yes.
Mr. Hagan.
Abstain.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt.
Yes.
Mr. Valente.
Yes.
Mr. Longstreth.
Yes.
Mr. Molman.
Yes.
Mr. Nana.
Yes.
Mr. Sexton.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Radza.
Yes.
Ms. Starwar. Oh, she's absent, sorry. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Wendt.
Yes.
It is 12-1-2.
It is adopted.
Okay, let me stop this. Okay. Couple things. Let me remove my... Now, for the most controversial part of the meeting, it was pretty tame, at least as far as emotions were concerned. I don't think as far as subject matter is concerned. I am appalled that it went to a vote. If I had wanted to be a jackass, I could have pulled the Justin Amash one. I like Justin Amash, but if we're going to start going as to who has said things to offend people, Justin Amash said on Twitter that libertarians are not anarchists. That is certainly offensive to a lot of people. And he also said libertarians don't want to abolish government. Well, some of us do. I do. But show me on the doll where Justin Amash hurt me, right? Both of them should have been approved without objection. So that's part of the whole culture that's left from when our former chair just started picking fights with people on Twitter for no reason. I know a lot of people have a lot of feels about a lot of people, and some of them have certain feels about Tom Woods. Most of them, the criticisms of Woods, I think are utterly ignorant. I can't say all of them because I don't know all of them, but the ones, most of them that I hear are utterly ignorant. I know him not terribly well personally, but more personally than probably most people listening to this. And he is a genuinely good man. And he is a libertarian through and through. He's not as conservative, by the way, as people think he is, but that's the audience that he has. I've seen him cut it loose a little, when he's not on the air. He's not as much of a stuffed shirt as some people think he is. And he did not deserve that vote like that. He should have been proved unanimously. But now I'm going to say something a little bit more controversial and some people might think is a bit of a shit stirring, but you'll have to judge for yourself. A lot of this is my personal opinion, and some of it, well, I guess it's all my personal opinion, but some of it I think's less opinion than others. I used to be a regional representative. I was Region 1. It's tough being regional representative because you don't get to vote, or at least you shouldn't be voting only your own opinion. You're supposed to be representing your region, meaning you consult with your state chairs, you find out their feelings on things, and you vote the way your region wants you to vote. There can be a difference of opinion as to whether you should just consult the state chairs or should you try to do polls of the actual members, but the general consensus is the state board, the people who can remove you, which is the state chairs. But one thing to me that's pretty certain is that you're not elected to just vote your own personal feelings. Again, some people may disagree, but I think that's a minority. And if it's not why you're there, then why are there regionals? Just have all at-larges. It's so you can represent that region. So a regional representative, there was only one no vote, and it came from a regional representative. And I could be wrong, but I do not for a second believe that represented the will of Region 8. And if it didn't, then that regional representative was voting improperly, in my opinion. Perhaps he did consult the chairs of Region 8. Mea culpa, I'll apologize in sackcloth and ashes if that's the case. But I don't think so, because I know the chairs of Region 8. And there is no way a majority of the chairs of Region 8 wanted him to vote no. Wanted him to insult Tom Woods in that way. And all of the people that want to hear Tom Woods. And if you're of the broader opinion that you're representing the membership of Region 8 or whatever region more broadly, I know for damn sure the majority of the membership of Region 8 would not have wanted to say no to Tom Woods. So why the hell did the Region 8 representative vote no? Because it was his personal opinion. You don't do that when you're regional. And if your conscience is such that you, even though your region would want you to vote yes, and you can't, then abstain. I've been in that position. I know how it is. The only time when I was Region 1 and I told my region this, and I told my region this when I ran, the only time I would ever vote against the will of my region was if I thought voting with their will would violate the statement of principles. But other than that, I was there to represent them. So if you're a Region 8 member and you don't like that no vote, tell your regional representative that and ask him if he had the support of his region for that no vote. And you can't say he didn't have time to at least try to find out, because it was in the morning that motion was put forward in the Convention Oversight Committee report, and the chair said we will hear this motion tomorrow. So he had all day and night to call region chairs, to post a survey on Facebook or whatever. And I didn't see anything on Facebook. I don't know what phone calls were made. But I doubt any was done. Honest, that's my honest opinion. And I know some people might think I'm bringing this up because Tucker Coburn and I don't get along. I mean, that's no secret. But this really isn't personal. I would be saying this no matter what regional representative it was. Because I don't think there's any region in this country where the majority of the regional chairs would have said no to Tom Woods. And I'm just appalled that there was a no vote from a regional representative. My opinion. I would love to hear your opinion. And if you are in agreement with me, you should be giving your opinion to your regional representative or asking your state chair to do so. But that is it. That was the biggest controversy of the weekend, but which is great for an LNC meeting, and we have our next 2 meetings set for you all to make plans. This upcoming weekend is the Frontier Project Summit. Unfortunately, I cannot go because it's unfortunate I can't go, but I'm not sad for what I am going to, which is the Florida State Convention. So I'll see you all in Florida for those of you who are going to be there. And that is it for tonight. I'm supposed to go out and sit by the fire with my husband and drink tonight, but it might be too late now because I told him I was going to make this short, and this wasn't that short, was it? So I am going to end once again with an appeal for my Patreon. If you can help, I'd deeply, deeply appreciate it. And we're going to close out with me doing a voiceover to thanking my current patrons. There are 2 more I need to add here. I haven't had time to do it yet. So if you are 2 of the newest ones, your name will be up on the next time I do this. And as I said before, we are going through Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. 1972, the next thing we'll be going through is Radicals for Capitalism. Thank you all, and I hope you have a very awesome night.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.